Hello, I'm Sifu Lamar Davis II. I would like to welcome you to my series on Bruce Lee's martial art, Jeet Kune Complete. The purpose of these instructional videos is to go more in depth than anyone previously has into the study of Bruce Lee's fighting method. In these tapes, not only will you see the how, but you'll see the why and the when. Most of you have probably seen books and other instructional videos on Jeet Kune. Certain elements of these books, certain elements of these videotapes probably sort of left you in the dark. You could not tell by the photo sequences how the technique would actually be applied, or you could not tell by the video all the various ways that a technique could be used. In this series, we will go extremely in-depth onto all areas of training. My background in Bruce Lee's fighting method goes back to the mid-70s. I trained with 8 of Bruce Lee's original students. I'm very familiar with the material from the Seattle period, the Oakland period, and the Chinatown period. I've written articles for Black Belt, Inside Kung Fu, Inside Karate, with many more to come. In 1991, I was inducted into the World Martial Arts Hall of Fame as the Jeet Kune Instructor of the Year. I think you'll see, when you watch these tapes, that myself and my students definitely know what we're doing. I think you'll learn a lot from the tapes if you study them carefully and train hard. I'm the Executive Director of the United States Jeet Kune Alliance. If you're not already a member and you are seriously interested in Bruce Lee's fighting method, membership is something that you may want to consider. Student membership is only $25 per year, renewable each year in the month that you originally joined. You get a newsletter, you get special offers, discounts on instructional videotapes like this one, and many other things that are not open to outsiders. We also have training camps each year, usually 2 or 3 times a year, for anyone who's interested in becoming an instructor of Jeet Kune. We promote the original method as taught by Bruce Lee. Where Bruce Lee died, that's where we end. We do, however, encourage, once you have completed our program, if you would like to go out on your own and maybe even go into the concepts route, that's fine. But many people were never given the chance to learn what Bruce Lee originally had to offer. That's the purpose of the United States Jeet Kune Alliance. We want to give you that chance. If you're interested in membership, you can write to me, Sifu Lamar Davis II, at 267 West Valley Avenue, suite number 223, Birmingham, Alabama, zip code 35209. We will send you an application and we will send you some information. If you would like to call about seminars or membership, area code 205-664-5425. You'll reach the office of my training academy, the Fighting Dragons Chinese Martial Arts Academy, which is the most complete Chinese martial arts training facility in the state of Alabama. If you're interested in US JKDA membership, please contact me and become a part of everything that we're doing. I would like to talk to you a little bit about the history of Jeet Kune and Jeet Kune. As most of you probably already know, Bruce Lee started out training in the system of Wing Chun. He trained in Hong Kong under the tutelage of Yip Man and 2 of his primary students, Wong Shun Lung and Chung Chuk Hing. Most of you know Chung Chuk Hing as William Chung. When Bruce first came to the United States, what he taught was primarily Wing Chun with a little bit of kicking and other techniques from some of the other systems of Chinese Kung Fu, primarily northern style Chinese Kung Fu kicking due to the fact that most of the kicking in the Wing Chun system consisted of from the waist down. Bruce wanted to broaden his kicking and make his use of the legs much more functional for combative purposes. During the Seattle period, Bruce taught such prominent people as Taki Kimura, Jesse Glover, James DeMille, Joseph Cowles, who was one of my instructors. Today, you can closely see what Bruce was teaching during the Seattle period by watching such people as Jesse Glover. Jesse has a series of tapes out that are excellent that cover certain aspects of non-classical Chinese Kung Fu. Jesse was also one of my instructors. When Bruce left the Seattle period, the Oakland period began. He resided in Oakland, California with James Yim Lee, who became one of his most ardent students. James Lee was responsible for building a lot of the training equipment that later was made famous by Bruce. During the Oakland period, you saw the addition of several techniques from boxing. You saw the addition of some fencing footwork and fencing defensive theory. You also saw some elements from certain other aspects of martial arts integrated into Jeet Kune Do. Basically, it was the Oakland period which the term Jeet Kune Do came into use. From the Oakland period, Bruce went to LA Chinatown and opened a school there. From the Chinatown period, certain prominent students that you will recognize would be Dan Inosanto, Ted Wong, Jerry Poteet, Daniel Lee, people of this nature. During this period, Jeet Kune Do reached its highest level of development and became a very, very, very combative system, as it always had been, but some of you have probably heard of a conflict that Bruce had during the Oakland period that forced him to make some changes in the original Junfan Kung Fu. Thus, Jeet Kune Do was born. Many people have referred to Jeet Kune Do as Chinese Kung Fu. Many people have referred to it as Chinese kickboxing. That's not really the important thing here. The important thing is that you realize that it was the method founded by Bruce Lee. Now, in this series of tapes, I intend to cover the techniques from the Seattle period, the Oakland period, and the LA Chinatown period in depth. Tapes in this series will be basics, like basic foundation movements, which will cover stance, defensive theory, basic concepts, things of that nature. You will see a technique on tape on hand techniques, a tape on kicking techniques. You will see tapes on the 5 ways of attack, basic trapping, advanced trapping, energy and sensitivity training, Seong Chi Sao, which is the double arm sticking. You'll see a tape on Seong Chi Sao with trapping and grappling. You'll see a tape on basic Jeet Kune Do self-defense techniques. You'll see a technique on grappling, a tape on grappling and counter-grappling. So these are some of the tapes that you'll see in this series. If you study them closely, you can learn quite a bit. And hopefully, if you acquire the entire series, you will be able to obtain a much more complete knowledge of Bruce Lee's art than you have at the present time. I think you'll enjoy the series, and I'm looking forward to working with you, and I hope that I can meet all of you in person one day and train you one-to-one. At this point, we'll get started. Hello, welcome to Junfan Jeet Kune Do Complete Volume 1, Foundation Structure. To start off, I would like to explain what's referred to as the Centerline Theory. This is a very integral and important part of training in Junfan and Jeet Kune Do, all the way from your beginning process to the end. This becomes very apparent to you very quickly that this is something that is used both offensively and defensively, this Centerline Theory. It's a very necessary part of Junfan Jeet Kune Do, and it makes everything a lot easier to understand. At this time, I'll be joined by one of my assistant instructors, Mr. Mark Turquette. I'm going to use Mark to demonstrate the areas on the center line that are considered vital targets. Okay, the center line is an imaginary line. Imaginary in the way that you can't see it. Real in the way that it does exist. The targets do exist along this line. This line runs directly down the center of the body. Now, if you were to cut someone in two and cut them exactly in half, the center line would be where they would be cut. Right down the middle. On this line or slightly off to either side of this line are the areas where someone can strike you and do the most damage. Some examples of potential centerline targets are the temple, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the chin-jaw region, the throat, the rib solar plexus region, the sternum, coming on down, the abdominal region, the groin, and based on your opponent's fighting stance and how he is facing you, the knee, the shin, and the instep can also become vital centerline targets. Now, if Mr. Turquette will turn around, I will demonstrate to you that also the center line applies to the rear of the body. You have the base of the skull, you have the top of the spine, you have the entire spinal column, you have the kidneys, you have the lower spine region, the small of the back, and the coccyx or tailbone, which is a very vital target area. A strike, when occurring to the center line, is usually a very solid strike, a very penetrating, very definite, very effective strike. Now, you'll notice when I push Mr. Turquette, when I push his center, he is very easily pushed off balance. However, if I push to either side, the force is somewhat deflected by the turning of his body on his central axis. Okay, once again, center, effective. It's a solid blow. Okay? If it's off to either side, a lot of the force will be deflected, and you will not have a good, solid, effective blow. In the next sequence, I will cover what we refer to as the theory of facing. In this segment, we will be discussing what is referred to as the theory of facing. Okay, the center line, as covered in the previous segment, has a lot to do with this theory of facing. Okay, at this time, I'll once again be joined by Mr. Mark Turquette, who is one of my assistants. He will take a position opposite me in relation to the tape line on the floor. Okay, now, when I face an opponent, when you face an opponent in combat, you face that opponent as if lining up on their center line, okay? This is what we refer to as the theory of facing. You face the opponent's center line when you engage in combat. Okay, now, to illustrate this principle and how it would work, Mr. Turquette will now assume a fighting stance, either left or right lead, it doesn't matter. Okay, now Mr. Turquette will straddle the center line, making sure that his right foot is on the right side of the center line and his left foot is on the left side of the center line. Okay, now, I'll assume a position with my power side forward. Now, if you were to look at two people engaged in combat and they were applying this theory of facing, this is what it would look like. You notice that I'm in an on-guard position. Mr. Turquette's in an on-guard position. I'm facing him in relation to his center line. This puts me in best position to attack Mr. Turquette's center line and defend my own center line. Okay, now, if he were in a square stance, just you see a lot of people who fight like this. They just bring their hands up and they fight you like this. If Mr. Turquette were in a square stance, that wouldn't make any difference. I still look at his center line and I still apply my stance, just as I explained earlier. Just like so. Everything in relation to the center line. I have an explanation of this that I use for my students that makes it easy for them to understand. This tape line on the floor represents the line from my center line to Mr. Turquette's center line. Okay, now, imagine that this is not only a line, but it's a wall going from the floor indefinitely upward to the ceiling, whatever, And this wall splits me in half and splits Mr. Turkwood in half, okay? So in other words, we're both cut in half now. Now anytime you face somebody, we refer to this as the centerline wall. Use the centerline wall to gain your alignment on your opponent, okay? And that should help you to better apply this theory of facing. So you'll be better set up to defend your own center line and better set up for an effective offensive movement against your opponent's exposed center line anytime he exposes an opening on the line. Okay, in our next segment, we're going to talk a little bit about what we refer to as economy of motion, which is a very important part of Jeet Kune. In this segment, I'm going to talk about what we refer to as economy of motion. Most martial arts teach a lot of unnecessary wasted motion, therefore wasting a lot of energy, especially in the area of defense. A lot of martial arts will emphasize blocking first and then striking. Blocking first and then striking. Okay? In Jeet Kune Do, whenever possible, we try to make the block and the strike the same move. Or the block and the strike are simultaneous, as opposed to block first, then strike, or block first, then strike. Nothing is wasted. Okay, to illustrate economy of motion, my assistant, Mr. Turkwood, is going to hold a focus glove for me, approximately head height. I'm going to do 3 kinds of punch, and I want you to tell me which one you see the most economy of motion in, okay? I know you can't actually talk to me, but treat it like you can. That way it'll work better for you. Okay, first of all, a Japanese, Okinawan, Korean style karate punch. Okay, that's the first punch. The second punch, the boxer's jab. Third punch, the Jeet Kune Do leading straight punch. Okay, which punch would you rather not hit you? Okay, slow motion analysis here. In the karate punch, the punch comes from the rear side. Okay? Travels all the way from a position beside the ribs to the target. Okay? So, a lot of movement going into that. Notice also that the body is open as the punch is being applied. Now we'll analyze the boxing punch, the jab. Notice that when I get ready to fire the jab, my shoulder raises, my elbow comes out, and I fire with a horizontal fist. So I'm moving around. Okay, notice at this point, my ribs, my lead side, are exposed to attack. Also notice the raising of the shoulder and the outward movement of the elbow upon delivery give away the intention of the attack. It lets the opponent know that the attack is coming. Okay, now let's analyze the Jeet Kune Do straight punch. From the basic on-guard position by Zhang, we fire the leading straight punch. Notice the distance that this punch has to travel. From here to here. No pullback, no wasted motion, just boom, just delivery, okay? Boom, right there, that's it. Okay. Notice that the rear hand covers. Notice that the elbow is down. So I'm well protected upon the delivery of the strike. Notice how I'm able to get my entire body into the Jeet Kune Do straight punch. The next technique that we're going to talk about is a back fist. In most arts, the back fist is chambered before it is delivered. Okay? I might be here, I may go here. Okay? I may be here, I may go here. Like so. But notice the chambering of the back fist. That's like saying, here comes my back fist. Okay? Notice the chambering. Here it comes. A smart Jeet Kune Do practitioner would trap the arms right here at this point during the retraction for that back fist strike. The arms would be trapped at this point. Okay? The Jeet Kune Do delivery of the back fist, very quick, very economical, no wasted motion. Right from where the hand is to the target and back. Notice the distance that it has to travel. Here, as opposed to here. Okay? Here, as opposed to here. Okay, now I'm going to show you what we can do with this back fist. It's got a bit more power. Okay? See the difference? The economy of motion, nothing wasted. The next technique that we're going to study is what we in Jeet Kune Do refer to as a hook kick. What is referred to in most styles of karate as a round kick or roundhouse kick. Okay. The karate practitioner, from his stance, will chamber the leg by lifting the knee first. Then, from here, he will deliver the kick and then rechamber and touch down. So, we're here, we're here, we're here. Notice the knee chambers, the kick extends. We rechamber, then we touch down. In Jeet Kune Do, this is considered wasted motion. Let's look at this kick a little bit faster. Okay. Before being actively involved in Jeet Kune Do, I trained in about a dozen other martial arts, obtaining black belt and instructor level in several. So I'm familiar, as you will see as this series progresses, with several different attacking methods. All right, now, the Jeet Kune Do variation is referred to as a hook kick. Notice the foot travels from right where it is to the target with no chambering before delivery, just right where it is to the target. The power comes from the torque of the waist and the hips into the kick. Now we'll speed it up a little bit. Watch the delivery. Okay, I think you'll see the difference. The next kick that we're going to cover is referred to as a straight kick. In some systems it would be referred to as a front kick. Okay? Another style may perform the kick something like this. Notice, coming from the rear leg, I chamber, I fire, I rechamber, and I set down. Or I may retract. Like so, okay? Notice how far the kick has to travel. Okay? Notice also the chambering of the knee before the kick is actually delivered. In Jeet Kune Do, this is considered wasted motion. The Jeet Kune Do variation of this is referred to as a straight kick. Once again, the foot travels directly from where it is to the target with no retraction. The only bend in the knee is the bend necessary to follow a straight line and to whip the hips into the kick. Looks like this. Okay? Can you imagine how that would feel? Firing into your groin. Okay. That's the end of this segment covering economy of motion. See you in the next segment. Now I'm going to cover what I refer to as fighting stance evaluation. In this evaluation, I will cover the various types of alignment of the feet. We will cover what is referred to as stance width or foot width, and also what is referred to as centerline width. Okay, we're going to discuss the pros and cons of all these various positions, and we're going to find the position that's just right for us. Okay? Now, we'll start off with what we refer to as a square alignment. In this position, neither foot actually leads. You've got the same amount of distance between yourself and your opponent with all of your striking limbs. Okay, now they also have easy target accessibility to anything on your body that they wish to strike. Okay, so one good thing about this is that we can hit or kick with all four of our limbs with equal capability, but also our targets, every target that we have, our center line, everything is basically open to the opponent. Okay, and if we don't move quick, they can exploit these targets very simply. All right, now, balance from front to back is not so good. If I lean forward, I go too far, and if I don't step, I'm going to fall. By the same token, if I lean too far backward, if I don't step, I'm going down. So, the balance from front to back in this position is not so good. Side to side balance is okay. I can move from side to side very well. So I have good evasive capability from side to side. All right, so there are good things and bad things about this alignment. Not enough good things to make it the one we use. The next alignment that we're going to discuss is what we refer to as a straight alignment. Okay, now take the center line into consideration. We use, once again, the black tape line on the floor. My rear foot, my lead foot, your center line. Okay, can you see that? Okay, now this stance, once again, this particular type of alignment offers good balance in one direction, but poor balance in the other direction. If I move too far this way, if I don't step, I'm going down. By the same token, if I move too far this way, if I don't step, I'm going down. Okay, now, I have good reach with my lead side, but I've already torqued out. Okay, I've already torqued out, so I sacrifice torque for reach here. Okay, I have good use of my lead side weapons, but I can't get any power because I'm already torqued out. Okay, now, my rear side, I cannot effectively use my rear side because my torque capability, once again, has been cut off by the alignment of my legs. Now, in order to kick, to use my rear leg, I either have to move my lead leg out of the way first so I can follow a direct path, or I have to come around my lead leg, which within itself is a telegraphic motion, like so. So you can see that kick initiating a mile away. You can see that coming, okay? Same way, if I'm over here and I want to fire that kick, you can see that coming a mile away. It's very telegraphic. A straight alignment will occasionally be used in Jeet Kune Do in a process of transition, okay? I may be here, I may temporarily go to a straight alignment to slide up and fire a side kick, for instance, if I'm going for speed, okay? So I may be here, I may take that straight alignment for just an instant as I move in to fire the kick, okay? Now, a position that you see in some arts that is not for practical purposes effective at all is what we refer to as a reverse angular alignment. In this position, the right foot is going to be on the left side of the center line, the left foot is going to be on the right side of the center line. Now you see I'm in a very awkward position. My rear center line is exposed to attack, okay? I can't use my lead side to attack well because I'm torqued out already. The only possibility I have for a good attack is a rear leg spin kick coming in like so, or a spinning back fist. Okay, now a spinning back fist, if you can't see that coming as telegraphic as that is, you might as well give it up anyway, okay? Now, for all practical purposes, what I've been able to see that this stance is good for, it prepares you to turn and run, okay? You're in a good position to run here, but that's about it. Okay, so we don't use that. All right, now you may be thinking, okay, if we don't use the square, we don't use the straight, we don't use the reverse angle, what do we use? This brings us to the type of alignment that is most advantageous for practical street combat. It's the angular alignment. The right foot is on the right side of the center line, the left foot is on the left side of the center line. I have good balance side to side, good balance front to back. I have good torque for my lead weapons, I have good torque for my rear weapons. I have good use of my lead leg, I have good use of my rear leg. So from this position, in this alignment, I'm set up very well offensively. Defensively, I can jam with my leg, I can stop kick, I can parry very well with either hand, I can evade very well, okay? So I'm set up very well in this position for both offense and defense. My balance is good from side to side. It's good from front to back. I have good use of all my weapons. Also, my lead leg, by this foot turning into the line at a 45-degree angle, the lead knee basically protects the groin. If a straight kick or a straight shot were fired into my groin, all I would have to do is torque, and the groin is closed off as a potential target. Also, it's very easy to just lift that lead leg and jam with it, okay? Very simple. Just a simple lift, and I jam an incoming attack. All right, so this angular alignment is best suited for combat. Now we'll talk about foot widths. What we refer to as a closed width is like so. About the only time you see this is for salutation. Ju Yi, which means come to attention. Gen Lai, which means salute, right here. That's about the only time you'll see this used, okay? All right, that's a closed width. A narrow width is defined as shoulder width apart, okay, or less, okay? When we go to approximately shoulder width and a half to 2 shoulder widths, that's what we refer to as a medium, okay? 2 shoulder widths or more is what we refer to as a wide foot width or stance width. Okay, now you notice earlier I mentioned not only stance width, but I mentioned center line width. This is the relationship of the feet to the center line. Okay, in this angular alignment, you can see my feet clearly. My center line width right now is approximately 3 inches. Can you see that? Do you know where I get that from? That's the distance between my feet in relation to the center line. Notice that my lead toe is about 1.5 inches off the line. Notice that my rear heel is about 1.5 inches off the line. That's where we get that 3 inches. So roughly my center line width is approximately 3 inches. Okay, now you have to really watch your center line width, because the wider it gets, see right now my center line width is approximately, I would say 14 inches, something like that. If I get out this far, see the groin is really exposed to attack. So you got to really watch that width. Try to keep it somewhere between, I'll say 3 and 6 inches. Center line width, somewhere between 3 and 6 inches. That's very effective. Okay, that's what we're looking for here. Okay, so that covers what we refer to as the stance evaluation. Okay, the next thing I'm going to cover is what we refer to as the Jeet Kune On-Guard Position. Okay, the Chinese term that we use for this is Baijiang. As you might have gathered from what we just discussed about these alignments, the angular alignment is the most effective for street combat. So that's the alignment that we use in the Jeet Kune fighting stance. If I were facing you in the Jeet Kune On-Guard Position, or Baijiang, this is what it would look like. Okay? See, I'm very closed off. You don't see a lot of open targets here. Okay? I'm set up very well to attack. I'm set up very well to defend. Alright, now, before we go over the specifics of this, I would like to let you view this from some different angles. 45 degrees facing right. 45 degrees facing left. Right side view. .45 degrees facing left rear. Rear view. 45 degrees facing right rear. And the left side view. That's the Jeet Kune fighting stance, or Baijiang position. Okay. Now we're going to discuss the specifics of this position. Okay, the specifics of this stance. All right. Now, first of all, we talk about width here. The foot width. You want approximately shoulder width and a half between the feet. Okay, shoulder width and a half. So we're going to get that angular alignment. And we're going to get about shoulder width and a half between the feet here. We've already discussed that the center line width should be between 3 and 6 inches. Okay, that way you're not too open, you're not too closed. Okay, like so. The lead foot should point into the line at approximately 45 degrees. The rear foot points a little bit more away from the line than 45 degrees, okay? You don't want it out to the side. You don't want it 45 degrees. 45 degrees is okay, but preferably turn it a little bit more to the front. So the lead foot points a little bit more to the front than it does to the side, okay? Now the reason for this being that this promotes a strong ankle position for pushing off to the front to lunge toward your opponent, okay? So that's the positioning of the feet. Now, the weight distribution is 50-50. You've got approximately the same amount of weight on either foot, okay? Approximately the same amount of weight on either foot. The rear heel is raised. You see that? The rear heel is raised. Now, the reason that we raise that rear heel, several reasons. One, it presents what we refer to as a false distance, okay? Looking at this from the side, see that the rear heel is raised. Just by dropping the heel and not moving any other part of my body, just by dropping that heel, I put about 6 more inches between myself and my opponent, okay? So in other words, if a punch were extended at my face and I were to just drop that rear heel, what would have contacted may now miss, okay? So, presentation of false distance. That's one reason that we raise that rear heel. Okay, another reason that we raise that rear heel is greater non-telegraphic movement capability, okay? With the rear heel raised, I'm set up to move forward and lunge into an attack. like so. I'm set up very well to move forward and lunge into an attack. Okay, now, what I mean by non-telegraphic heel. If both feet are planted flat, like so, and I raise that heel to move forward, you pick up on this little slight forward movement. Let me let you see that from the side. You pick up on this little slight forward movement. That gives away my intention to move forward. So if the heel is already raised, there's nothing to give away my intention to move forward. Also, by this heel being raised, you're prepared to torque. To torque into a lead hand strike, to torque into a rear hand strike, to torque into a kick. Okay? You're set up to torque the body and pivot on the ball of that rear foot. So by having the raised rear heel, you're much more prepared for that pivot of the rear heel as you torque into a lead attack, as you torque into a rear attack. Okay? So, that's another reason for the raised rear heel. See, there's too many reasons to raise this heel to position it flat. Okay. The next thing we talk about is the knees. Alright. In my school, we have a saying that a straight leg is a broken leg. Okay? The knees should be bent at all times. So you should assume your fighting stance with a slight bend in both knees. Okay? Looking at that from the side, you see this slight bend in both knees. That's very important. Very important. Just a slight bend. Okay. Then we'll talk about the positioning of the trunk, the upper body. Okay, it should be vertical. You should not be leaning forward and hunched over forward into your position. You should not be leaning backward in your position. This leads to excessive wear on the abdomen and the lower back. You want to maintain a vertical position where if you had to move the upper body backward to avoid an attack, you can still do it. If you have to move the upper body forward during the course of an attack, you can still do it. If you're already leaning forward and you need to get some more distance to the front, you can't do it without actually stepping, okay? So, for that reason, the upper body remains erect. Looking at it from the front, you should see the upper body in an erect position. Okay, the elbows are in and down, like so, at the sides. Hanging as they would naturally. Just let your arms hang at the side naturally and bring your hands up onto the center line, and that's where those elbows are. They're not out like this. This is like saying, smash my ribs, please. Okay? So you keep these elbows in and down. Alright? So that they are allowed to protect and offer natural protection to the ribs. The alignment of the shoulders, look at your rear toe, look at your lead heel. That's the line that the shoulders should follow. Make a straight line from the rear toe to the lead heel. That's the line that the shoulders follow. Okay? Don't face your opponent squarely. This offers him more to hit. The more you turn to him, the more he has to hit. Okay? However, don't turn and face him like this either, because this is an awkward position and it makes delivery of your tools very, very awkward. Okay, so this is what we've got so far. Angular alignment, rear heel raised, foot width about shoulder width and a half, okay? Knees bent, 50-50 weight distribution, upper body erect, elbows in and down. Hands on the center, shoulders lined up on an imaginary line from the toe of the rear foot to the heel of the lead foot. Okay, so this is our position so far. Okay, now the positioning of the hands. The rear hand, if you're looking at it from the side, will be inside the shoulder and below the chin, like so, okay? The lead hand is going to be about a foot in front of it, okay? About a foot in front of it. It's going to be at either the same height, a little bit higher, or a little bit lower, okay? Now, the reason for that is, when you face an opponent, your lead arm has to line up in a position so that it's most effective for you to strike your opponent with power. If you have a taller opponent, your lead hand is going to be a little bit higher. If the opponent is approximately the same height, the lead hand is going to be about shoulder height, the same height as the rear hand. If your opponent is a bit shorter than you, the lead hand will be a little bit lower, okay? Like so. Later on in the tape on hand attack, you'll get into what we refer to as aiming the gun. This is a principle that I use to teach my students to fire a punch with more directness and with more power. But if your hands are positioned correctly, you're positioned better to aim that gun. Like I said, we'll get into that more when we get to the tape on offensive hand techniques. Okay, the positioning of the hands themselves, the fingers are open, okay? Don't completely close, don't completely open, just halfway between open and close. Slight curve to the fingers, okay? Like so, just a slight curve to the fingers. If the fingers are straight, you make them available for jamming and breaking, okay? Also, they're easy for the opponent to grab the fingers, especially if you overextend your lead, which you should never do. Okay, so the fingers are lightly curved. Okay, some styles teach you to close the hands. Hard positioning for blocking and striking. Closed hands, okay? In Jeet Kune Do, we don't do that. And the reason for this is that when you close the hand, you flex the muscles in the forearm and you form a braking action on the punch. A punch can be a lot faster if you just relax and explode from that position, okay? Just relax and explode. Don't tense up. If you tense up, you're going to slow yourself down. Over the years, many times I've seen a student take a perfect stance and ruin it by tightening the upper body like so. Okay? It's like, nobody's going to move me. I'm Mr. Man of Steel. Nobody can do anything with me. You've got to relax. Just relax. You can move much quicker. Everything comes to you much more natural this way. Okay? So, hands halfway between open and close. That way you can open into a finger jab or close into a straight punch with equal speed. Okay? So you can go from this position to an open hand technique, like a finger jab or a side palm. You can go from this position to a closed hand technique, like a straight punch or a back fist with equal speed. Okay? So, halfway in between, fingers slightly open, curved. Hands relaxed. Okay, so this is what we've got so far. Okay, now let's talk about the head. The head tilts slightly downward to where a full fist couldn't get into the throat, either in the vertical or horizontal position. Because let's face it, you catch a fist in the throat, that's it, it's over. Okay, so this is what our position should look like once we take all the elements into consideration. Okay, once again, side view. Okay, that is the Jeet Kune Do On-Guard Position, which is sometimes referred to as Bajong, which is Chinese for on guard. Okay, now, we'll cover some more elements of this stance later on as we get into the series. Okay, this is a very, very important base to work from. Everything that you do from here on out, everything that you develop, will come from this stance. We do have variations of this position. Okay, the early Bajong position used during the Seattle period was like this. The center line passed directly through the center of the rear foot, and that foot passed through the line at a 45-degree angle. The lead foot, the toe, was touching the line. The weight was shifted back onto the rear leg. Both knees bent, both feet planted flat. Okay? Got the weight shifted back onto the rear leg. The upper body was angled, much like it was in the later fighting stance that I just demonstrated. The hands were held in the traditional Wing Chun on-guard position, like so. Okay? The weight distribution used here was approximately 60-40, sometimes 70-30. Looking at it from the side, on the other side. Okay, now, we still occasionally use this position. Okay? If you close the gap in a trapping situation, you can use this position to jam, to shift more of your weight onto the rear leg, and to free up some of the weight off that lead leg. That lead leg, in a trapping situation, when it jams, it will act as a sensor. Okay? It acts as a sensor. So when you contact your opponent's leg, this leg will tell you any movement that his leg makes. This leg is a sensor. Much like the sticking hands that you'll learn later on. This leg is a sensor. Okay? So, having some of the weight freed up is very important, because if they should attempt to sweep or kick, you can free that leg up very quickly, or you can apply what we refer to as cheek guard, which is sticking legs, and you can stick to their leg and turn their own technique against them. Okay? So that's why in this position, the early Bajong stance, the weight was freed up some off of that lead leg. Okay? So this is a good position. Once you close the gap, you might be in your basic on guard position. You may close the gap. You may find yourself in this position applying certain movements as you close the gap. This position may be used. So, it's not like that position was completely discarded in favor of this newer on guard position that I've just discussed with you. Okay, so we do still on occasion use that, and it is considered very important. Another variation of the modern on guard position is what we call the small phasic bent knee stance, which is basically what I went over earlier, but it can also be done with the lead hand low. Okay? What you've seen a while ago is the lead hand high position. The rear hand can stay in the same position. The lead hand can drop to position just in front of the groin. If you have the book, The Tao of Jeet Kune Do, or if you've seen that book, you'll see a detailed description of this position in that book. And if you look at it carefully, this is what you'll see. Okay? This is the small phasic bent knee position with the lead hand low as opposed to lead hand high, which we covered earlier. The only difference basically is the positioning of that lead hand. Okay? Now, if I turn to the side, show you that same position, right here, like so. Notice that the elbow is out here. Okay? It's what we refer to as the immovable elbow. Whether you're in the lead high position or the lead low position, this elbow should be at least 3 inches in front of the body. Don't want to get it in here where it can be trapped or pinned easily. Okay, so here or here. Okay? That's what we're looking at. Okay, now, that's a pretty good description of the fighting positions that we use in Jeet Kune Do. Okay? Now, the next thing I want to talk about is what we refer to as power side forward. Okay? This is a very, very important, very active theory in Jeet Kune Do. Most martial arts put their power side to the rear. Like in boxing, most of the time you'll see a boxer moving around. He's got his power side back here. Okay, in Jeet Kune Do we put the power side to the front. That applies to this position, and this position. We put that power side to the front. Why? Because that puts the power closer to the target where it can best be used. Bruce used to get a lot of question about this. If you put the power side to the front, how can you get any power? One thing that I like to demonstrate with this is what I refer to as the 1-inch punch. And I'm going to have one of my assistants come in with a focus glove and assist me in demonstrating this 1-inch punch. Now, when Bruce used to catch a lot of flack about putting the power side to the front, which a lot of your traditional stylists don't believe in that because they're used to, getting in a position with the power side to the rear and delivering here and firing their kicks with the power side to the rear like so. I've always got this thing in seminars when I'm talking about this, I say, please, nobody take my picture while I'm in this position or this position because we don't do that, okay? But anyway, we put the power side to the front because less distance to travel, less telegraphic, no wasted motion, okay? So, if Mr. Turker will come over here now and hold a focus glove for me, right on the line, I'm going to demonstrate this punch. This is going to come from 1 inch away, like so. 1 inch away, okay? Now, this demonstrates proper application of body to technique, okay? Now, when I apply this, it's going to be rather quick. There'll be a tape later on that will teach you how to do this. So don't worry about trying to learn it from this because you can't. But this is what Bruce would do to show that you don't have to have the power side to the rear to get power. Watch this because Mr. Turkwood is going to fly to the pitcher rather quickly and he won't return in this sequence. Okay? Okay, that's Bruce Lee's 1 inch punch. a punch applied from a distance of 1 inch away. So whenever anybody says, how can you get any power putting your power side to the front? All I have to do is just show them that 1 inch punch. They have no more questions. Can't imagine why, can you? Okay, so the power side forward theory is very important because it puts your power right up there where it can best be used, right up there where it's most effective. Okay? In the next segment, I will show you some footwork that I use to teach my students to be more aware of their positioning and more aware of how to assume this fighting stance without any major preparation. In this segment, I'm going to cover what we refer to as position awareness exercises. Okay, now this is some drills that I do with my students to help them be aware of their position at all times and to help them be better prepared to assume a fighting stance immediately. Okay, now, in these exercises, you will hear 6 commands, basically 6 commands. Those commands will be angle right front, angle left front, angle right rear, angle left rear, rezone right, and rezone left. Okay, now these positions are all based on your position in relation to your opponent's position. If he moves in on you to attack, you will assume a certain position based on where he is, where he's coming from, and whether you have your right side or your left side as your power side. Okay, now, from a natural position, like so, as if I were unprepared for any type of attack or anything, this is where we drill this. We work it from right here. That makes it more natural, that makes it come to you more easier. Okay, now, if I'm going to zone right front, that means simply I'm going to step with my right foot to the front and assume my stance. Like so. Okay, so we're here. We're here. Right now, if I'm going to zone left front, that means I'm going to step to the front with my left leg and assume my stance. Like so. Okay, now, naturally, if your left side was your power side, this would be the movement for you. However, myself, with my right side being power side, this would be the movement for me. Okay, now, if I'm going to angle right rear, that means my right foot is going to step to the rear, and I assume a left lead stance. If I'm going to angle left rear, that means my left foot is going to step to the rear, and I'm going to assume a right lead stance. Okay, now, I want you to watch these movements from the side and see if you can see the advantage or disadvantage of these movements. Okay, now, side view with me standing on the line. Okay, if I'm going to zone right front, that means that my right foot steps out to the front. Okay, if I'm going to zone left front, that means my left foot steps out to the front. Okay, now, if my opponent were at a distance from me that was not close enough to pose any immediate threat, then I would want to move forward into my fighting stance. So that's where these angle front movements come into play. Angle right front, angle left front. Okay, my right side being my power side, if my opponent was still not at a real threatening distance, I would use the right front movement, okay? So I'd angle right front, which would be here. That would put me into my fighting stance, ready for combat, with no wasted motion, no wasted energy. Okay, if I were left lead and my opponent posed no immediate threat, I would angle left front, assuming the left lead fighting stance, on guard and ready to fight. Okay, once again, standing on the line. If my opponent were moving in toward me, naturally I would not want to move toward him into my stance because the distance might close to a position that would actually be too close for me to be prepared, for me to immediately be prepared. So in other words, if my opponent were moving toward me, I would not want to move in on him unless he were quite a distance away. And that would be sort of unrealistic because usually a fight doesn't start from across the room, it starts from only a few feet away. Okay, so me being right side, power side, if my opponent were moving toward me and I felt that he may be too close to me for me to move forward, then I would use the left rear movement. That would put my left leg to the rear, put me in a right lead fighting stance facing my opponent. Okay, once again, from here, left rear. Okay? If I were natural left lead and my opponent were too close, then I would zone right rear. That would put me a little further away in a left lead. Okay? A little further away in a left lead. Okay. Occasionally, an opponent will rush in on you. You'll be faced with a sudden forward rush from an opponent. And not only will you have to assume your stance, it might be better if you changed your alignment, okay? So in other words, that you didn't line up straight on him, but you lined up straight on his center at an angle. So instead of coming from here and going to here, if he was rushing you very quickly, me being right lead, what I'd probably do, I'd rezone to the right, which would mean I would step out with my right foot and then swing my left leg around, and that would put me adjusted facing him, but facing him where he will be by the time I assume my stance, not facing him where he is at the time of the rush. Okay, so from the normal relaxed position, I'm going to step out with my right foot, then I'm going to swing my left foot around, and I'm going to change my alignment. Whereas normally I would be here, now I'm going to be lined up over here. That way, if he were rushing me, I could change my angle on him and be at a more effective angle to take his oncoming rush, okay? If I were natural left lead, I would rezone to the left. So, from the normal square position, I would step with my left foot, swing the right around, that changes my alignment. So that by the time my opponent gets to within striking distance, I will be in proper alignment to deal with that opponent. Okay. A drill that I do with my students is to have them stand in a natural position, and I simply call either right front, right rear, rezone right, or rezone left. At this time, my assistant, Mr. Mark Turkwood, will come in and take a position in front of the camera. I will call these positions, and he will assume the position, hold the position for a second, and then recover to this natural position prepared for the next call. Okay, Mark, if you'll join me now. As I call the commands, Mr. Turkwood will respond to the command by moving into the appropriate position. Ready? Right front. Right rear. Left rear. Left front. Rezone right. Rezone left. Left rear. Right front. Left front. Left rear. Rezone right. Right front. Right rear. Left rear. Left front. Rezone left. Right front. Right rear. Left rear. Right rear. Rezone right. Left front. Rezone left. Right rear. Rezone right. Right front. Right rear. Left front. Left rear. Okay. What you've just seen was an example of these basic position awareness drills. All right, you can see where these particular drills would assist you in learning how to immediately achieve the fighting position. Okay, so once again, a brief review. Right front, right rear, left front, left rear, rezone right, rezone left. That's it. These basic drills will help you in learning to achieve your fighting stance immediately. What I want to talk about in this segment is proper body mechanics. Okay, in Jeet Kune Do, everything is based on using the body. Not just a part of the body, but the body. In a lot of martial arts, when you see a punch, the punch is fired just with the arm, okay? Just an arm going out there, no body behind it. Occasionally you'll see a little bit of push off the rear leg, okay? A lot of martial arts, when you see a kick, it's just a leg going out there. Just a leg, not the body. In Jeet Kune Do, certain scientific principles are applied. The body goes into everything. Every punch, every kick has the force of the body behind it. In Jeet Kune Do, when we punch, we don't just punch with the arm. The punch starts with the raised rear heel. I push off that foot, I pivot, then my waist and my hips come into it. They start to torque. My shoulder starts to push forward, my elbow moves forward, my hand propels into the target, and I strike through the target, and I return. So the whole body gets into the punch. Therefore, you have the power of the body going into the technique. So when I fire a punch, my body is behind that punch, not just an arm. When you're training, always keep this in mind. Put the body into the technique. When we kick, it's not just raise the knee and kick. It's the body. Can you see the difference? Okay, can you see the body getting into it? The pivot on the ball of the foot? The torque from the waist and the hips? The arms getting into it? The extension of the leg? Okay? That's getting the body into the technique. This is a very important element in Jun Fan and Jeet Kune Do. Every time you train, think about that. Think about getting the body into that punch. Think about getting the body into that kick. Not just the arm, not just the leg. Okay? In this segment, I'm going to discuss visual focus principles. Okay, when you face an opponent in combat, what do you see? What do you watch? A lot of people answer this question, which I ask a lot at seminars. They'll say, I watch the eyes. They'll say, I watch the hands. They'll say, I watch the feet. Okay, none of these answers are correct. If you watch the eyes, they'll use eye fakes or eye feints on you. They'll look at something. They'll look down. They'll make you think that they're going to go for the knee. And right when you think they're going to go, they'll feint with the lower body, and you'll respond by trying to cover that, and then they'll hit you with a hand, see? So they can feint or fake with the eyes. Also, another possibility that you face here is the possibility of psychological warfare here. Okay, they may use what we refer to as the evil eye on you. Okay, that's like, the way I explain this to my students, I'll give you two opponents, and you tell me which one you would rather fight. Opponent number one. Okay, opponent number one. Opponent number two. Okay, which one would you rather fight? Probably opponent number one, because he doesn't look that threatening. He doesn't look that mean. Okay, so this is another way that they can get you if you look at their eyes. Okay? They can psych you out with their eyes. All right, so if you don't look at the eyes, they can't do that, and they can't use those eye fakes, those eye feints. They can't use that on you. Okay, so you don't look at the eyes. All right? The next common answer I get is I watch the hands. Okay? If you watch the hands, they'll feint or fake with the hands, and they'll get you with a kick. Okay? You're watching something up here, and then they tag you down low with a kick. Okay? So watching the hands can lead to a lack of awareness of their lower body weaponry. All right. Then some say they watch the feet. Okay, this is not good either, because you watch the feet, they fake a kick, and then they get you with a hand. So they're moving around, you're watching them, they act like they're going to start a kick, and then they get you with a hand. Okay, so that's not good either. Okay. What do you look at? Okay, if you don't look at the eyes, you don't look at the hands, you don't look at the feet, what do you watch? Okay. When you look at a punch, no matter what kind of punch, whether it's vertical fist, whether it's lead hand or rear hand, what moves first? What has to move for that punch to take place? The shoulder, because that's the central axis for movement for a punch. The shoulder, okay? By the same token, the central axis for movement of a kick is the hip joint, okay? Now, if you take the body and you draw a line from shoulder to hip, see where that line crosses? Approximately the solar plexus area. Okay, that's where I tell my students to watch, the solar plexus. In martial arts, there are two kinds of vision. There's central vision and there's peripheral vision. Okay? Now, I tell my students, when you fight, central vision should not exist. Central vision is when you're learning, you're studying a technique, you're watching your instructor, you're watching me do something, and you want to get every detail of that movement. Central vision, you watch the movement. Peripheral vision is where you watch a certain spot, use that as a reference point, and take in everything around that spot, okay? That's peripheral vision. In a fight, central vision does not exist. It should all be peripheral. That way, they can't surprise you with anything. They might have superior attributes, and they may hit you or kick you before you can do anything about it, but at least there's no excuse for you not knowing what they hit you or kicked you with. Okay? So this is what we refer to as the primary focus point, right here. If you focus in on this area and use your peripheral vision to take in everything around it, you're studying the center of the mass. Everywhere they move, if you watch this, you know exactly where they're going. Okay, like I said, this is a primary focus point. We also have what we refer to as secondary focus points. Okay, you may say, what are secondary focus points and why are they necessary? Okay, it is physically impossible for someone to punch you without the elbow moving. Okay, the elbow has to move in order for a punch to take place. Okay, that's whether it's horizontal fist, vertical fist, or a karate punch. The elbow has to move in order for a punch to take place. And since the elbow moves approximately half the distance of the fist, it moves a little bit slower and it's a little bit easier to watch. It's a little bit easier to keep an eye on than that fist, because the fist is out here, it's moving faster. The elbow is moving slower because it moves half the distance in the same amount of time. Okay. When you kick, you cannot kick without the knee coming into play. That's whether it's an economical kick or whether it's a karate style kick or a karate punch and a karate round kick. See, when you see the punch coming, the elbow moves, okay? The elbow moves. When you see the kick coming, the knee moves, okay? So, no matter what style, if it's Thai boxing, and they fire that low kick in there, the knee has to move. See? The knee moves. They see it coming, okay? You can see that knee coming at you. So we take the elbows, the knees, and the forehead. Why the forehead? Because the forehead is attached to the body. The head is attached. It can't go anywhere without the body. And the head goes there first, okay? The head goes there first. You can't move the body forward and leave the head behind. It just doesn't work that way. So, the head will give you a constant awareness of where the body is going at all times. Elbow movement precedes punches. Knee movement precedes kicks. So, the elbows, the knees, the forehead are considered your secondary focus points. You use these secondary focus points to avoid becoming too focused on your central focus point, which is the solar plexus region. Okay, so when you assume your fighting stance, if you're in a proper stance, it's going to look like this. All right? You should be able to take in everything from just above the top of your opponent's head to your lead foot. Central focus point, the solar plexus. Secondary focus points, the elbows, the knees, the forehead. Okay? Now this way, he cannot move without you seeing him initiate that movement. Okay? He cannot move without you seeing him initiate that movement. Now you say, why should you have to see your lead foot? Why be aware of that? Okay, this is still yet another sort of secondary focus point. The reason for this being, if you can see your lead foot and you can see your opponent's entire body, you are constantly aware of the distance between yourself and your opponent. Okay? Which we refer to as the fighting measure. The fighting measure. Okay, my assistant, Mr. Mark Turkwood, will step in now and assist me with demonstrating the fighting measure and how the fighting measure is defined. Okay, Mark, assume an on-guard position. Right lead will be fine. Okay. At this point, Mr. Turkwood can extend a punch. He cannot reach me. I can extend a punch. I cannot reach him. He can extend a kick. He cannot reach me. I can extend a kick. I cannot reach him. However, if I take 1/2 a step and close that distance, my kick can land. Okay? So, that's how we define the fighting measure. It's the distance of 1/2 a step from kicking range. Okay? In other words, right now, I can't get in, but with 1/2 a step, I can get in. Okay? So, that's the fighting measure. Now, you're either inside or outside the fighting measure. As long as we're outside the fighting measure, we're okay. Because he can't kick me, he can't hit me. Okay? I can't hit him, I can't kick him. But with 1/2 a step, I can be there. With 1/2 a step, he can be there. Okay? So, We have a simple rule that we apply here. As long as you're outside the fighting measure, you're safe. That's your probing range. That's the distance that you use your body feel to pick up on what the opponent's doing, to pick up on the opponent's basic ability. That's the distance where you feint. You probe. You get a feel for how your opponent reacts to feints and fakes. Okay? So, that is a basic explanation of the fighting measure and what the fighting measure is all about. Now, you are either inside or outside the fighting measure. Anytime you go to the inside of the fighting measure, you should be attacking. As long as you're on the outside of the fighting measure, you're okay, you're safe. But you come to the inside, you should be attacking. Okay? Inside the fighting measure, attack. Outside, probe, get a feel for the range, use feints and fakes to test your opponent's response. Okay? In this segment, we're going to discuss the 4 fighting ranges of Jeet Kune Do. In the previous segment, when I was talking about the fighting measure, you heard me discuss that the kicking range was the longest range. That's the first range encountered. That's the first thing that you can encounter when attempting to close the gap on the opponent, is a kick. Okay, so that's the longest weapon. All right, the 4 ranges in Jeet Kune Do are the kicking range, the hand range, the trapping range, and the grappling range. Okay, we're going to explain each range and give some demonstrations of what can take place at each range. Mr. Turkwood is going to assume the on-guard position in a left lead. Okay, the first range encountered is the kicking range. Back up just a little bit, please. Okay, first range, kicking range. Okay, the kick is the longest weapon. So, first range encountered is the kicking range. Okay, that could be a side kick, could be a straight kick, okay? But the first range encountered is the kicking range. The second range we encounter is the hand range. That's defined by the finger jab. The full extension of the finger jab, that's the longest hand weapon. The finger jab. That's the longest hand weapon. See the extension that I get with the finger jab? Much more than a punch. Okay? That's the longest hand weapon. So that determines the start of the hand range. Okay, the next range encountered is the trapping range. Okay? At this range, I can first trap or grab or pin my opponent's upper body or lower body limbs. Okay, assume a right lead. Okay, now I'll demonstrate some of the basic traps that you will encounter and learn in the tape on basic trapping. Alright, let's say that I fire a straight punch, which Mark defends with his lead hand. I just continue with a pak sao, which is a slapping hand, and fire the punch through. Okay, so we're here, we're here, we're here. Okay, so at first I'm at hand range. Okay, now, see, I'm at hand range. Now this is where the trap can occur. Alright, another trap that I could have used here would have been lop sao, or grabbing hand. He blocks my punch, I grab, and I hit. Notice the body torque, the waist and the hips, the legs getting into the punch. Notice I punch past the head. That trains my penetration. Okay, those are simple traps. We also have compound traps, which we'll get into some of those in the basic trapping, and you'll get into a lot of compound traps in the advanced trapping tape. Okay, an example of a compound trap. What if I fired a punch, he blocked, I did a pak sao, and he blocked that, or parried that. Okay, now, I cross grab, which is defined as lin lop sao. That's Chinese for cross grabbing hand. Okay, so now we've got straight punch, pak sao, lin lop sao. Speed that up a little bit. Okay, that's an example of a compound trap. Another example of a compound trap would be lop south, okay? Double lop south. Okay, that's with a solar plexus shot. I could have thrown a back fist or straight punch to the head. Okay? Now, the trapping range is the most dangerous of all ranges. Why? Because at this range, all of the body's natural weapons can come into play. At the trapping range, I can punch, I can elbow, I can headbutt, once again, elbow, I can use the forearm, I can use the knee, I can use a downward elbow, once again, the knee. I can apply, at this range, certain kicks, okay? And even the shoulder can be used as a weapon at this range, okay? Most people don't think about things like headbutts, shoulder smashes, elbow smash, inner forearm smash, knee smash, things like that. Most people don't think about those. Most people think about your basic punching and kicking movements. That's all they think about. So, in the trapping range, when all these things can come into play, that's the most dangerous range. Alright, once you pass the trapping range, then you're into what we refer to as the grappling range, where certain arm locks, holds, bars, takedowns, things of that nature can be applied. If he attacks me, I can parry, come in, lock him out, take him there. He'll pass out from that pressure fairly fast. Again, he comes in, around here, take him out there. Okay? Those are examples of grappling moves, things that take place in the grappling range. Okay, so it's possible to flow from kicking to hand to trapping to grappling. See? You can flow right from one to the other. See? Just flow right from one to the other. Very easily done. Kicking, hand, trapping, grappling. Okay? Just that simple. Alright, these are the basic ranges of Jeet Kune Do. You'll learn more about these ranges as the series continues. In this segment, I'm going to discuss defensive zones and perimeters. Okay. In Jeet Kune Do, basic body defense is divided into hand defense and leg defense. Alright, we're going to divide the body up first into three parts. Okay, one part is going to consist of from the feet to the groin. Okay, this we'll define as the lower area. Okay, then from the groin to the solar plexus. This we'll define as the middle area. Then from the solar plexus to the top of the head. This we'll define as the high area. So you have low, middle, high. Okay, now we're going to come down with the center line and we're going to split all three of these areas in half. So now you have a right half and a left half. Or as you're looking at it, a right half and a left half. Okay, now, for the sake of defensive theory, we're going to take this lower portion from the groin down and refer to that as the leg defense zone. Any attacks that are coming in below the groin, you defend with the legs through a process that we refer to as jamming or intercepting, which would be a basic stop kick. Okay? So you would either jam or intercept. Another option that's always available to you is evasion. Okay? So you could jam, intercept, or evade, which means to simply get out of the way. Okay. So from here down is the leg defense zone. So now we're going to take from the groin to the top of the head and define this area as the hand defense zone. Okay, this is going to be the high hand defense zone. This is going to be the low hand defense zone. Okay, now taking the body and dividing it on the center line and dividing it here like so, on the center and here like so, we have a cross here. Okay, now this gives us a clear definition of 4 corners. Here and here you have 1, 2, 3, 4 corners. Okay? Now, these are what we refer to as the 4 corners of hand defense. These are the hand defense zones. Okay, Mr. Turkwood will now assume a right lead fighting stance. Okay, now, for an instant, I want him to drop his hands, and I want to explain something to you. Okay, I'm going to explain how we define these 4 corners. Even with him in the fighting stance, you still have 4 corners. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 corners. The only difference is now he's not facing you squarely. Okay. This is the outside of his stance. This is the side that is closest to you. This is the outside of his stance. So if he's right lead, his right side is the outside. His left side would be considered the inside of the stance. It's like I explain to my students in class, if you approach a house, what do you come to first? The outside of the house or the inside of the house? Of course, you come to the outside of the house. Okay, so think of it that way. This is the outside of the house. The center line is the door. Okay? So, once you pass the center line, you're on the inside of the house. So you come to the outside of the house, you go through the door, you're on the inside of the house. That's a good way to remember this. Now I'll ask Mr. Turkwood to take a left lead facing the camera with his hands down. Okay, now, this would now be the outside, this would now be the inside. You come to this first, then you pass the center, and then this. Okay? So, now we name the corners. Back to right lead. Okay, now we're going to name these corners. This is the outside high corner, right here. This area is the outside high corner. This area right here is the outside low corner. This area over here is the inside high corner. This area over here is the inside low corner. Now, as you'll learn later in the tape on basic hand defense, these 4 corners are very important. This is also important for what we refer to as lensil didar, which is simultaneous defense and attack. Okay, now if he were in a left lead facing the camera, this would be the outside high corner. This would be the inside low corner. This would be the inside high corner. This would be the outside low corner. Okay? So, you would have outside high, outside low, inside high, inside low. Okay? Then from the groin down, that's leg defense. So, when we just split the body up into 3 parts, you're talking low, middle, high. Now, this is what we refer to as attack zones. If you attack down here, you're attacking the low zone. If you attack between the groin and the rib solar plexus, you're attacking to the middle zone. If you attack from the rib solar plexus to the head, you're attacking the high zone. But for defensive purposes, from the groin down is the leg defense zone. From the groin to the solar plexus is the low hand defense zone. From the solar plexus to the top of the head is the high hand defense zone. These are your basic defensive zones. Now with the leg just like with the upper body, you have the outside leg defense zone and the inside leg defense zone, defined once again by the center line. Okay? This is the outside, this is the inside. Outside leg defense, inside leg defense. Okay, now Mr. Turcotte will take a right lead fighting stance facing that direction with his back to the camera, and I'll explain what we refer to as defensive perimeters. Okay, he will extend his fist. Okay, now he'll maintain this position while I explain this to you. Okay, if an attack comes in and it extends past the elbow, in other words, with him holding his arm out extended like this, if I attacked and my attack came past this point, as you see it doing here, okay, that is what we refer to as an inner perimeter attack. Anything from the elbow in is an inner perimeter attack. Okay, from the elbow out, in other words, if I'm out here and I don't get in, that's what we refer to as an outer perimeter attack. Okay. Now, the difference here being, if it's an inner perimeter attack, Mr. Turcotte will have no choice. He has to defend. He has no choice. He has to defend. If it's an outer perimeter attack, he has a choice. He doesn't have to do anything if he doesn't want to, because what that means is that the opponent has misjudged the range and has not closed the gap enough to land his attack. Which Mr. Turcotte could be the cause of that, because he may retreat as the opponent moves forward, making an attack that would have been an inner perimeter attack, an outer perimeter attack. Okay, so inner perimeter, you have to defend. Outer perimeter, you can just let it go, or you can defend and use it for a stem for trapping. Okay? All right? So, you have a choice here. Okay. These are what we refer to as the defensive perimeters. So we've covered defensive zones. Now we've covered defensive perimeters. Extended arm, elbow to head, inner perimeter, elbow to hand, outer perimeter. Okay? Now, basic Jeet Kune or basic Junfan Jeet Kune defensive theory. Okay, there is no wasted motion, no wasted energy. Okay? It is preferable that your defensive move is part of your attack. Okay? So in other words, if I'm being attacked to the head, it's preferable that my defense and my attack are together. If I'm being attacked low, my defense and my attack are together. Okay? This is basic JKD defensive theory. Okay? It is preferable to defend and attack simultaneously, what we refer to as Lin-Sil Dadar. Okay, now, the same theory applies with leg defense. Okay, if an attack is below my groin, if I go down to defend, I try to stop it with my hand, I bring my head into attacking range. Okay? I go down here, my head is immediately open for attack, and I'm in trouble. So what I should have done, I should have simply evaded, or stop kicked, or jammed that attack. Okay? I can evade, or I can evade like so, or I can jam, or I can stop kick, or I can stop kick with the rear leg. So I can go lead leg, rear leg to stop kick. Okay? So, that's the preferred way of defending the lower body. As you can see, once again, the economy of motion that we discussed earlier comes into play here. You'll learn more about this later on the tape that covers hand techniques, the tape that covers leg techniques. There's an entire tape on defensive theory. Now, once you've seen this tape, you'll better understand these principles. Next, we're going to cover some of the basic tools of Jeet Kune Do that you'll be working with. In this segment, I'm going to describe to you some of the basic tools of Jeet Kune Do. I hope basic tools didn't mislead anybody in the description of what was going to be covered, because I'm not going to cover all the punches and kicks here. I hope nobody thought I was going to do that. What I'm going to do is describe the basic parts of the body that are used as weapons in Jeet Kune Do. Okay, now we talked about that a little bit when we were talking about the fighting ranges, but I'm going to go a little bit more in detail about it so you can better understand it. Also, the in-depth coverage of this will be later on in the tape that covers the hand techniques, the kicking techniques, the body weaponry, things like that. So there's going to be a much more in-depth explanation of all these things coming up in a later volume. Okay, in Jeet Kune Do, basically, no part of the body is ruled out as a potential weapon. Primary weapons are the fist. Okay, in Jeet Kune Do, when we strike with the fist, we prefer to fire the fist in a vertical position with the elbow down. It's a very economical structure and much more effective. Okay, the impact area is the bottom three knuckles. The back of the fist is used in the back fist. Okay, when I fire a back fist, I strike basically with this area right here for a back fist. So from the on-guard position, the back fist goes out. Basically, I'm striking with these two knuckles and the back of the hand. Okay, we use the open hand like a side palm strike, which is designed to strike the jawline and drive the head back to expose the throat. The side palm. So the palm is a striking weapon. Also a vertical palm that comes up directly into the nose to break the nose. Okay? You'll also see what we refer to as a circling palm or jiao sao, which is also defined as running hand, okay, which is a circling move like so, using the palm. It's as if you were throwing a hook punch, which is another basic weapon used in Jeet Kune Do, except for this time, it's the palm that you're firing with. Okay, now, just watching me do this in the air, you have a hard time seeing the effectiveness of this strike, but trust me, it's a very effective blow. In a later tape on hand techniques, you'll see this demonstrated against various striking targets, and you'll fully understand the effectiveness and the potential that this particular strike has. Okay, the elbow is a major weapon in Jeet Kune Do, applied in several ways. We can go across with it, we can go up with it, we can go down with it, we can work on angles with it, okay? We can come in with a rear elbow, we can elbow straight back, okay? So the elbow is a very versatile weapon for Jeet Kune Do. Earlier I showed you the shoulder smash, so the shoulder can even be applied as a weapon. You can even use that shoulder as a weapon in Jeet Kune Do. Another thing that we use a lot that is neglected in most arts is the headbutt. Okay, let me caution you. When you use the headbutt, it's the frontal part, the forehead, that you fire the headbutt with. Never, ever, but forehead to forehead with someone, okay? This technique is applied to the jawline, to the nose, and to the temple, okay? That's where we use the headbutt for. If you're not absolutely 100% sure that you can land that headbutt to the nose, the temple, or the jaw, don't even fire it, because those are the areas that are weak for the headbutt. Those are the areas that you can come out on top, striking with the head. Okay, the knees. There's an angular use of the knees, an angular knee smash that you'll see later on in the tape on body weapons. There's an angular knee smash that comes in on an angle. There's a vertical knee smash that comes straight up, okay, which can also be fired with the rear knee. So you got lead knee, rear knee, angular, vertical, angular, vertical, okay? So the knees are an important weapon. Okay, the areas of the foot that you strike with are the instep, which is the top of the foot, the toe. Jeet Kune Do is a shoe art. So a lot of times you can get away with firing a kick in using the toe. A particular area for a toe strike would be the groin or the solar plexus. Both of those are effective areas to fire a toe shot in if you're wearing a shoe. Okay? Also, you can come at the kneecap from underneath with a toe shot to dislodge the kneecap from underneath. Okay, the ball of the foot is rarely ever used, but occasionally we will jab. Sort of a jabbing straight kick will come off the lead leg, firing in toward the knee. Okay, the effect this has, this kind of locks out the knee and makes for an effective entry. So that jabbing straight kick is something that we will occasionally fire that uses the ball of the foot. Okay? So, these are some of the basic tools of Jeet Kune Do, some of the basic striking weapons that we have in Jeet Kune Do. Also, occasionally with a hand, you'll see a clawing movement or a gripping movement. Okay? With the forearm, you can strike with the inside. Most people don't realize that. You can also strike with this part of the forearm, coming across, like so. So you've got an inner forearm strike and an outer forearm strike, or downward forearm strike, like so. Okay? Most people don't even think about these weapons. So, as you see, in Jeet Kune Do, everything is covered. We use everything as a potential weapon. Even at times, the hip bone could fire in if the timing was right. If you were to the side of your opponent and their groin was exposed and you could smash into their groin with your hip bone, shoot it in there, okay? See, that's proper use of everything. The shin can be applied. The shin can fire into the sciatic nerve. On the leg, you can fire a hooking type kick into the sciatic nerve, like so. From your on-guard position, just boom. Occasionally we'll fire a rear leg shin shot, like so, into the sciatic nerve, okay? Like so. The sciatic nerve runs along the back of the thigh. It's a very effective target. Also, occasionally the shin will go straight up into the groin, like so. Straight up into the groin. That's very effective. So these are just some of the tools from Jeet Kune Do. Just some of the things that we use. Okay, in this next segment, my assistant, Mr. Mark Turkwood, will step into the picture here and assist me in a demonstration of what we refer to as straight line versus curved motion. Okay, Mark? A lot of times in a fight situation, you encounter these big, wide, curving movements. You'll see people step in. A lot of people, you'll see this is the first thing you'll see in a lot of fights. They've got their weak side to the front, power side to the rear. They step in and throw this big barroom brawl type hook. Okay, a simple straight line shot will beat this big wide hooking motion every time, as we'll demonstrate here. So I don't even have to hurry. I can just sort of put my straight punch out there. Notice that I cover. I've got a cover here, like so, okay? But notice how the straight line beats the curved motion. Notice how effective it is in countering against that curved motion. By the same token, it works the same way on a kick. If Mr. Turkwood fires a kick off his rear leg, and it's in a curved motion, see, I can stop kick even with my rear leg. Why? Because he's throwing a rear leg kick, and I'm throwing a rear leg kick. You would think, well, how could I beat him with my rear leg kick? The key is, my rear leg kick was non-telegraphic, and it went straight from where the foot is to the target. Now this is what we refer to as a domtek, or stamp kick, in Jeet Kune Do. This is using the cross variation of the kick. Okay? The cross variation. Alright, another version of it would be just boom, to just stamp directly onto my opponent's foot. Okay? Another example of this would be he fires his kick, I stop kick with my lead leg. Once again, straight line beats a curved motion. Okay, now, an exception to this rule is when the straight line is cut off, like if Mr. Turkwood were on guard here, move in a little bit, on guard, and he was holding this arm up here, okay, and this arm up here, okay. Now, see, my straight shots are cut off, okay. That's where trapping comes in. That's where trapping would create an opening here. see? That's where the trapping would come in. Now, if I came in here and shot this and he blocked with the other hand, boom, see, I'll just go in there, okay? So that's where the trapping would come into play, okay? So a lot of times, I'll fire a straight line shot knowing that it's not going to get in order to expose for a trap, okay? See, I know that there's nothing there right now. Another thing I can do, I can initiate a low line shot to force a lead hand response from him, and then I can take the curve and strike high. So a lot of times, if your straight line motion is cut off, curve will get you in. By the same token, if curved attack is cut off, if he holds his hands out like this, he's holding his hands out like this right now, okay, curved line is cut off, see, because he's closed off those perimeters. Okay, however, a straight line shot, boom, will go right in there, okay? Straight line shot will go right in. So, this is a basic explanation of what straight line versus curved motion is all about. Most of the time, we prefer to take the most direct route to the target. Now, the only time we don't is when there's an obstruction on the line. Okay, if there's an obstruction on the line, you take a curved motion. If there's a defensive response, you trap. Okay? It's just that simple. All right, I hope you've enjoyed this first tape on Jeet Kune, and I hope that it lived up to your expectations. As you can see, I tried to cover everything as in-depth as I possibly could, and I hope you feel good about the things that I've covered. I hope you feel good about the way that we've done this. Once again, if any of you would like to join the United States Jeet Kune Alliance, you can write to me at 267 West Valley Avenue, suite number 223, Birmingham, Alabama, 35209. These tapes are also available for order at this address. The cost of the tapes, $34.95 for non-US JKDA members, $29.95 for US JKDA members. Once again, I hope you've enjoyed this tape. I've really enjoyed doing it for you, and I hope sometime in the near future I'll be able to meet you in person. Whether you come here to Fighting Dragons Chinese Martial Arts Academy to train with us, or whether I come to your area for a seminar. I travel all over the place doing seminars. My fees are very reasonable. If anyone would like to sponsor me for a seminar, you can contact me at the address already mentioned, or you can call area code 205-664-5425. Once again, I've enjoyed working with you. I look forward to hopefully meeting you in the future. Until then,